Hi everyone, thank you for watching Wild East by director Matīss Kaža. I have him here with me and we're going to talk a little bit about the film and hopefully give you a deeper understanding of what you've just seen. Welcome Matīss, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So the first Latvian Western is a big bold brand. Can you tell us about how you came or why it was important for you to make the first Western?
Yes. So ever since I was a teenager, I've been a big fan of the genre. I remember on Latvian television, they had this really cheesy C category, I think, Disney Western show called Zorro. And after that, I watched a lot of spaghetti Westerns and classic American Westerns. And I love the fact that the Western genre is innately cinematic. It uses composition, movement, and the basic kind of visual cinematic elements are the essence of the genre. While the storytelling is essentially a colonial fairy tale in the context of the American Western. So we took those ideas and kind of, me and my team, we thought, what would happen if we took the essential elements of the Western and then place them in an environment that's completely unfamiliar to it, thus exposing how ridiculous actually some of the stuff that the Western does is. And the film, I think, is very playful about that and very ironic about that in many ways.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you mentioned, cinematic, and obviously nature plays a big part of that, and you have these grand sweeping nature landscapes. Can you talk about where you filmed and how you got that effect in the movie?
Yes, well, we cheated a little bit. We didn't film all of it in Latvia. The first part of the movie actually, like the prologue, actually takes place in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, so it was natural for us to go shoot in what was back then that territory, which is northern Italy. So we have an executive kind of production company that helped us film there, but we had this opportunity to get financing there. And we shot about 8 days in Italy, and it was a wonderful experience because it brought the film to a new visual level, because those kind of that kind of scenery is very typical of the Western, but it's very atypical of Latvia. So after the prologue, there are certain scenes where you can see that it's not quite Latvia, but it's something along the lines of what if there were a more westerny Latvia, or rather, there used to be this part of the Daugava River called the Daugava Senlea, which is no longer the kind of cliffy landscape that it used to be. There used to be bigger cliffs. There used to be a different kind of visual texture to that part of the river back in the 19th century. And there are visual documents from the early 20th century as to what that looked like. So we tried to imitate that in parts of Sweden and then in northern Italy, hiding kind of the big, Alp mountains, but coming down to those, to those brown textures that are typical of the Western.
And so, I mean, like you mentioned some of the tropes and some of the composite parts that are part of a Western. Were there any cliches that you wanted to avoid, or did you were there any that you specifically wanted to lean into? Can you talk about how you adapted it?
Well, I think if you watch the film, you see that there are many of these Western tropes are kind of taken and then placed in a situation where they're kind of upside down or they're reversed. So, of course, it's a very masculine genre, and we kind of tried to reverse it in the sense that the only characters in the film that actually do something meaningful and powerful are women, because all the guy characters, well, the investigator kind of does something, but all the rest of them are pretty much useless if you think about it. So that's one way we reversed the in the typical American action Western, it's the male who sets out to adventure and then, basically corrects society and then comes back victorious, but here it's not the case. It's it's kind of they all fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I like that you. I mean, you say that you had fun with it, and that you know, you can. It's obvious that you enjoyed what you were doing, but part of it is also real. You know, there is history behind it all. So can you talk about the research you did to kind of create that backdrop, and what you allowed yourself to play with history, and what you wanted to keep very realistic?
Yeah, so there's one similarity between 19th century Russian Empire and America, which is the way the societal system is structured. Of course, we don't have the American plantations, but we have the Baltic German manors, and that whole system of
the serf
and the serf system. It got abolished. So just like slavery got abolished in the 19th century in America, serfdom got abolished in the Baltics. So it's this post-serfdom society, and it's also interesting that it's a trilingual society where there's Russian, which is mostly spoken by government officials and everything that's done with that part of society. There's German, which is spoken by the German landowners. And then there's Latvian, which is essentially the language of the post-serfs, or the emancipated serfs, so to say. And that kind of colonial environment is something that I wanted to play with, and it's something that we actually do play with quite a bit, especially at the end, where it's kind of 1905, a revolution pre-1905 in a way, where these, servant girls hang the Viennese guy in the Baron, So we play with this in a kind of fun, stylized way, but it's by no means a historical film, and all the characters are completely, fictional. But it's not like it's not a completely impossible scenario. It's a highly stylized scenario and a fairy tale kind of structure. But it takes elements of the reality of 19th century Latvia, whatever that could have been.
Yeah.
We don't know.
And what I really enjoyed is that you don't take the history so seriously.
No,
I do think that there does tend to be, or there is a tendency in Baltic cinema to kind of be very respectful and very serious about the past. I don't know if you agree.
I agree, and it's funny how historical cinema works like that in the Baltics, because of course there is this tendency to be very kind of serious about it and almost enjoying the pain of the past in a way, to a degree that I don't find sympathetic personally. But on the other hand, we don't actually know how it was, in the 19th. Nobody knows, and it's the same about the Middle Ages or any other period that's before our lifetimes. Even these very serious films, they're a contemporary interpretation of what could have been, 1941 or whatever other gloomy year in Latvian or Baltic history. In this case, we kind of take this as a given that we don't know what happened really in 19th century Latvia. None of us were there, so why don't we? So we're not going to pretend this is a historically accurate setting, but we're going to have fun with the elements that we know kind of were there, and make it into our own little fairy tale. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that lightness, but I do think it's something that's only starting to happen now. Maybe it's a different generation that can look back in a different way.
Yeah.
Anyway, these are my own musings. So back to the film. Obviously, one of the other tropes of a Western is horses, and I read a few interviews with the actors, and they had some interesting stories to tell. Would you mind commenting on how they?
Yeah. So in order to, it was a very difficult film as a first project, mainly not because of the directorial aspects, but because of more of the action sequence and horse wrangling aspects of making a Western, which I of course knew nothing about. But we had many actors on horseback. Most of them did the scenes without stunt doubles. Some of them did have stunt doubles for the scenes where the horses have to go really fast, but most of them didn't use stunt doubles. And they had up to 3 months of training, of horse training, prior to the filming. And I think one actress actually took 3 months of horse training, only one scene with her on horseback, absolutely. But anyway,
It'll come in handy.
Yeah, it'll come in handy later. No, but the nice thing is that several actors, such as, for example, Agnes Budowska, who plays Amanda, she still goes on these kind of horse riding training sessions because she enjoyed spending the time with those horses so much that she still does it. So, and it's a very kind of sensitive process because you have to get accustomed to the animal, and the animal has to get accustomed to you, and it's like making a new friend. It's not like you just get on horseback and you film and you go. No, you have to really befriend the animal, and it's a thorough process.
It sounds like this is probably your most ambitious project to date. I mean, all the countries and the horses and the people and everything. What do you feel like you learned by making this film?
Oh wow! Since this was my first fiction film, like feature fiction film, I learned quite a bit. I mean, well, first of all, it's all the technical aspects of how stuff like that's very sensitive topic now, gunfire on set, stuff like these horses, stuff like shooting action sequences. I made a lot of mistakes in this film that now I wouldn't make again, of course, and stuff that had to be fixed in the editing room because there was lack of experience. But I learned a lot about that, and also about working with stylized acting, because and working with performances that are not psychological realism, that are kind of more towards the kind of quirky, almost caricature-esque portrayals, and kind of constructing that kind of performances. Because my next film, for example, goes the opposite direction. It goes towards hyper-realism and like almost a documentary sense of presence. So this is me trying out the spectrum of what performance on the screen can be.
Yeah, that's interesting. So how? I want to hear you talk more about how you got these stylized performances. Like, what was difficult about eliciting this new style on them?
First of all, the Western doesn't really require deep psychological biographies of characters. You need to do what you need to do in the scene, and that's it, pretty much. It's not a drama, not a psychological drama or something like that. It's more based on the face, because there's these extreme close-ups. It's based on how you look, how you can, through playing an action, how you can set the mood for an entire scene by doing one little thing, just by turning your head, and then it turns into a comedic little moment. For example, like in the scene between Orlovsky, the investigator, and Imre, the bounty hunter, there's this scene where he just twists his head towards Orlovsky, and everybody in the audience is laughing. So, I mean, it's like that. It's these small kind of physical. It's a very physical genre in terms of acting.
And to round off this interview, I'd like to talk about the music, because you've had a very interesting journey with the music. So
the music is composed by. We actually have 3 composers. We have Imants Kalniņš work, which is Imants Kalniņš is a very famous Latvian composer of many classic movies back in the 70s. And his work is arranged to make it more Western-y by 2 composers, one of whom is Latvian, who's Matīss Kaža, and then by Simon Gambar, an Italian composer, who in addition to arranging Kalniņš, he's responsible for the more dramatic orchestral part of the soundtrack. And then Matīss was responsible for the band feeling, for the electric guitar and drums and all that kind of more popsy vibe, you could say, I guess. But we chose this concept because we wanted to make a reference to the old Morricone soundtracks, but we also wanted to bring that Latvian element in, and in this case, that Latvian element is Imants Kalniņš's famous
more classical than
music.
Cool. Cool. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing your process with us.
Of course.
Thank you everyone for watching.
Yes, thank you.
I do also want to remind you that the festival still continues until November 14th. We have a full lineup, so if this was the first movie you watched, please go to our lineup and watch some more. You have one more week, so enjoy. Thank you.